Welcome to the riskadvisor.com podcast. I am Jim Henry here with my good friend and co-host Sal Lafreri. We hope you enjoy this show and ask that you go to iTunes or your favorite podcast platform and give us a great rating. Your opinion means a lot to us. Today's topic is improving the security industry for the benefit of all stakeholders. Well, if that isn't a challenge like having peace in our time, I don't know what it is. But, I've been in this business a long, long time, and I've witnessed the maturation of the security industry from really a cottage industry pre-9/11 to a trade and now to a profession. And it has been enabled by visionary leaders. Our guest today is Ray Coulombe, Managing Director of Security Specifiers. Ray is one of those few individuals that combine wisdom, vision, and leadership with focused dedication to action items that have materially advanced the security industry to the profession that it is today. Ray's bio is posted in the show notes here, because if I read the whole thing, the podcast will be over. So I'll just reference that Ray, in addition to being an entrepreneur in the industry from various perspectives, holds a BSEE from Cornell, master's in management from MIT, and Rensselaer Polytech, graduate certificate in cybersecurity from University of Rhode Island, and numerous professional certifications. He belongs to ASIS, IEEE, ETA International, Tau Beta Pi Engineering Honor Society, and currently he is co-sponsoring with SIA a cybersecurity competency certification effort for security industry technicians. Ray, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Jim and Sal, for the opportunity to speak to you all. Yeah, that was quite a task that you related at the start, and I think equating to peace in our time is probably very appropriate. So, just by way of background, I've been in this industry probably about as long as Jim Henry, give or take, which means probably approaching half a century, right, Jim? Mm-hmm. But in any event, over the years, my time has been spent primarily on the manufacturer side. But in the process, I've had the opportunity to work closely with reps, with a number of integrators in society, integrator organizations like PSA, and also occasionally with security consultants. So I had a brief hiatus from the security industry and worked in a closely associated industry, that of intelligent transportation systems. But the two industries share several common characteristics in addition to technology. One of those is the impact of consultants. And over time, I saw as an entrepreneur, as a startup manufacturer, every now and then we get a call from an integrator saying, yeah, we'd like a quote on your stuff. And this is after unsuccessful attempts at trying to work with that integrator. So, well, why the change of heart? Well, a project specification just came out, and you're in it, and we'd like to bid your stuff. I said, well, what project specification? So we would trace our way back up the tree and found that a consultant along the way somehow became aware of our product or technology, whether it was fiber optic transmission equipment or video encoders, and realized that if you could get to these guys and make them understand that you had something that was very neat and that worked and that solved the problem, that in fact that could lead to business down the road and actually drive business fairly well. So fast forward when one of my companies, Cypix Networks, was acquired by Cisco, and as so often happens with acquisitions, and many of us here in this room can understand that, the people who sold the company are kind of left wondering, well, what are they going to want me to do here until my sentence is up and I get to go do something else? And so we were bought by Cisco, and my response to that question at Cisco was, well, let me create a consultant engagement program for you, and we'll work on A&E specifications and things like that. And they said, well, what is all that stuff?
The timeline for that was
circa 2006, 2007.
Right. And that's right about
only yesterday.
And that's right about the time that we also saw the movement post 9/11 into security now becoming part of the construction and operating budgets for major corporations and whatnot. So there was a big acceleration of spend in security. There were a lot of companies jumping in. Some had no background, some had good background. But when there's money out there, people are going to start chasing it. So now you're right. You're seeing a bunch of projects, thrown about, and those different legs of the stool between the consulting side, the integration side, the manufacturing side, they're all out there with basically no, no directional signals, no bumpers, no coordination, and that's basically what you got exposed to when you did the outreach program.
Well, a lot of times with a stool, Jim, you can't see the far leg. It's hidden, and I think that the consultants over time have been the hidden leg of the stool. And just as my friends at Cisco didn't quite understand it, I realized that a lot of other manufacturers didn't either. And along with that, nobody really knew who all these people were. That there are a few out there that are well known in the industry. They attend trade shows and they're active, but there are many, many more that aren't. And the reason for that is twofold. One is that many consultants are simply, they're not geared to marketing their wares. They work on relationships with architects and specific end users or word of mouth, but they're not really, really good at getting out there and marketing themselves. It's almost like they're waiting for business to come in the front door. Larger engineering firms, which may have consulting disciplines, I'm talking to billion-dollar plus firms, they do a pretty good marketing job, but security is just a small activity typically within a much broader organization. And so many of those folks are hidden as well. So that just led me to a realization that if I were going to do something further, that it might be an interesting idea to pursue that line of thought. How do you make consultants more visible? How might you engage with manufacturers to get them to just understand the game better? And what toolkit does a manufacturer need or care package to give, as I call it, to a consultant to have a more effective engagement? Because up to that point, there weren't any published lists. There weren't any published guidelines. People didn't really know what CSI was other than three letters that went in front of another set of obscure terms called master format. Not obscure to people in construction disciplines by and large, but pretty obscure to people in the security industry. So there was just a general lack of understanding on the part of probably 97% of the manufacturers in the industry and some significant percentage of the rest of the industry. So does that lay that out for you well enough, Jim?
That's a great foundation. And, I think that was really then the impetus for coming up with the concept of security specifiers. And the intriguing thing when you reached out to me, to be the kind of a little bit of a voice from the outside, from the integration side, because, initially it was really, coordination of the integrators, with the manufacturers and the specifiers. But you knew that the integrators were a piece of this ecosystem. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to contribute, my observations and whatnot, in the early days of specifiers. And it was, it was no doubt a great learning experience for me as well. It was entering into almost the lion's den, it seemed, with some of the advanced perceptions on the part of consultants, because, too often consultants and integrators, looked at each other as, as enemies of the state, as and each other, because the, consultants would write a spec, project would go out, and the consultant may or may not be involved. Integrator takes over, and the consultant's not part of that, a handoff or a transition or discussion or collaboration, going forward. The integrator then is forced to make some decisions, generally fitting into shrinking budgets. And then the consultant comes back and goes, "What the hell happened to my project?" And he looks at the integrator like, the great Satan. But I recognize that even though we had that negative in some cases, I personally had some really good, collaborative experiences with consultants, but it was the exception rather than the rule, and you recognized that that needed to change. It needed to be a more, we're all working for the same goal of a satisfied end user, and that's should be music to the ears of the end users that that are the focus of our podcast here, and tackling that internal structural problem within our industry, by putting together a program, like specifiers to really provide that networking platform between, consultants and manufacturers and having integrators have a say in that as well, was really, it's so simple. That's what makes it genius, because it was just, you could see that need and it was fulfilled by putting that program together in 2010. I'll take this point to kind of do a wrap here on the first segment, and then we'll get into some of the logistics in segment 2 on the actual structure of in your early days of putting together security specifiers, and then other things that you saw, like what you were talking about here with Construction Specification Institute and some of the contradictions between some of the sections of that that spec that created some difficulties in the industry. So you are listening to the Risk Advisor podcast hosted by Jim Henry and Sal Lafreri. We ask that you subscribe and follow us on our social media like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you are interested in having one or both of us speak at an upcoming event or would like to consult with us, please go to our webpage at theriskadvisor.com to set that up. So, Ray, I kind of teed up segment 2 here for you with regards to, those logistics. So why don't you take us through those early days of, specifiers and how you zeroed in here on that project that you so philanthropically undertook at with Division 28.
It's a lot of people have a lot of good ideas, and I guess the key or the magic is trying to translate that idea into something useful and tangible, and ultimately that will sustain itself going forward. So as I was winding down from Cisco, I actually took an early retirement package from Cisco, but I was midway through, because I had educational benefits for the first time in years and years. I was midway through my master's in IT at RPI. And so when I took leave of Cisco, I decided to finish up that degree, still with that consultant idea in the back of my head. And one of the courses that I took was database management. And that's when the light bulb went on. I said, I bet I could take these principles and marry that with the need to create a database of consultants that would be usable. And that might be the genesis for something where manufacturers would simply want to access that database, access that list, because there wasn't really anything that was out there in the industry. And, how can you interact, with a group of consultants if you don't know who in fact they are? So I evolved that a little bit more and actually realized that I knew a guy who was just a crackerjack in this area. And we got together, and he actually did the database coding, me with the knowledge of what databases could do and what the way that I would like to see it built and delivered from that. And so we started after 6 months of defining the database and creating the database. We launched it as a subscription service, and so my first customers were actually subscribers as opposed to sponsors, and we got some good early traction from several companies whom I knew, and I think we had a database at that point of 750 consultants that I had assembled from various sources. It's roughly double that right now, and it continues to grow at some rate. So we began doing that, building our manufacturer base, and at the same time, I wanted to know more myself about the whole A&E specification process, what people call A&E specs. And that led me pretty quickly to CSI, the Construction Specifications Institute. And they actually have a couple of very, very good certifications that I would recommend to anybody in the industry. The first is called the Construction Document Technologist. And it's a course that you can self-study for. You can go to local chapters and engage with people to get firsthand knowledge or take a course in it. But it's all about the mechanics of project management, construction project management. And so I went through that, self-studied for it, and passed the test and got that CDT qualification, which gave me a tremendous amount of insight. Just ironically, at the same time, we were building a house in Rhode Island, and I was managing the architect and the contractor and everything, with schedules and budgets. And by the time that was, I got done with a CDT, I realized that I'd been applying all those principles unbeknownst to me because they were just common sense. But it goes through various types of contracts and a variety of things that have utility for those that need to understand project management and the construction process. But anybody that's looking to deal with a consultant should probably be aware of that process, because it really puts their role into context and sort of opens up the door to interact with these folks better. Incidentally, there's a follow-on certification that CSI has, among many, but for manufacturers and integrators, there's something called Certified Construction Product Representative, which is if you're representing a product in some fashion, how do you actually interact with on the consulting side? And that can be distilled down very, very simply to a few words. 2 words: trusted advisor. Become a trusted advisor to the consulting community. And I try to impart that message. So, with that in tow, I began to really evolve our mission a little better, which was to help manufacturers, at that point subscribers, but we changed the term to sponsors, to more effectively engage with the consulting community. And I tell all of our sponsors, and we have a number of competitors in our sponsor base, that I'm not here to assist you with competitive strategy or this guy against that guy. Really, my mission is to help you put your best foot forward to the consulting community. Because if everybody did that, then consultants would have the best possible information from which to make a design decision. And that actually played pretty well. Okay, so that was helpful. And then as I continued to interact with people on their A&E specifications, reviewing their specs, and occasionally writing some product specifications for manufacturers, the CSI has something, it's like a big set of SIC codes, if you will, that is a hierarchy, a numerical hierarchy of construction classification codes. It covers wood and metal and concrete and plumbing and HVAC and electrical and communications. And all these things are lumped into divisions, logical breakdowns called divisions. And there is one division called Division 28, which is called Electronic Safety and Security. That's our division. Although we commonly see things in Division 08, which is openings, doors, and windows. So a lot of the lock hardware and that kind of thing is Division 8. We're seeing a little in Division 27, which is communications due to the networking type products. But as I looked at Division 28 and that logical breakdown, it hadn't been touched since 2004. And even in 2004, a long time ago, and this is 2014 now that we took a look at this, the breakdown in 2004 was not informed by ASIS, not informed by SIA. It was informed by BICSI, which is more passive, cabling, that type of thing, than active security devices. So I approached SIA and said, listen, I'd like to approach CSI with the offer to work on bringing those categories up to date and hopefully creating a new set of categories within Division 28 that properly reflect what is being used in our industry today. And SIA happily went along with us. We approached CSI. They were happy to talk with us. In fact, after the effort was done, they said, Ray, we knew this was broken. We had no idea of how we're going to fix it. So thank you for you guys doing this. And so we completely redid Division 28 with some interesting stories along the side, probably each the subject of their own podcast, and came out with hundreds of new entries We moved cabling into Division 27. We did such things as, just take, for example, a camera. So in the new order, we called a camera with subsets for specialty cameras, IP cameras, analog cameras, and the like. But before that, cameras were lumped under a category called remote devices and sensors with no mention of the word camera. Well, what the heck is that? It's a camera. So we did things like that and just really made that reflect the industry as it exists today. And even now, we will add every other year, which is when the master format gets revised, something new. One significant add, by the way, which you'll leave into something later on, was an entry called cybersecurity requirements for electronic safety and security. So we got that put in there. And then in this last iteration of CSI master format, we got that put into Division 27 communications as well. So really a major add and a nod to the fact that cyber needs to be a part of all these construction specs.
Your contributions along collaborating with SIA on CSI have been tremendous value to the industry. And again, speaking from my background as an integrator, it was always very challenging, looking at specs that were loaded with absenteeism and or contradictions. And if there's anything that drives up the cost of a quote, it's uncertainty. And bringing clarity to the specs, getting rid of some of these contradictions and addressing some current product, current technology, and putting in its rightful place made it a lot easier for not only manufacturers, but integrators as well to be able to understand the scope of a project and to price that out. And it was, at least, you got the due award for that contribution by SIA awarding you the Jahan Excellence in Partnerships Award, for your role in that effort. And as you say, you're continuing, that's a living, breathing process because the technology and the products continue to morph, and cyber is a big new element of it. So we'll take a break here at the end of that segment, and then we'll get into segment 3. You are listening to the Risk Advisor podcast, hosted by Jim Henry and Sal Lafreri. We ask you subscribe and follow us on our social media like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you are interested in having one or both of us speak at an upcoming event or would like to consult with us, please go to our webpage at theriskadvisor.com to set that up. So getting into the final session here, which we typically make the solution session, although you've certainly shown the path of the solution in the pieces we talked about in the second segment. But, there was still something missing after all your work with specifiers and division, with the CSI divisions and whatnot. And, you talk about your latest brainstorm that has been such a tremendous success, that being console.
We had, as I said, we had a number of manufacturer sponsors that signed up. We now number over 40 really fine companies like Electronics and Linnell S2 and JCI and Intel and a number of other great companies. We don't have enough time to name them all, but a number of them would come to me and say, "Ray, we'd like to do some type of event. What do you recommend?" And I said, that's a tough question because there are a few companies that put on really, really great events. Linnell S2 is one example that has an annual event. Axis does a great event, and there are several others, but really great events are not inexpensive to put on. So I started suggesting smaller regional events, things that weren't a major time burden on consultants, because consultants can only go to a few of these things a year because they're on billable hours. And then the thought hit me, well, what if I thought about putting on an event that a number of manufacturers could attend all together, time sharing and cost sharing, a major consultant or A&E event, and do it in a way that would attract the consulting community so that we'd have a critical mass of consultants to make it worthwhile enough to manufacturers to come and to help fund this. So we did that. And there were several elements of that. One, I realized that as worthwhile as some of our trade shows are, that they're not a great time for consultants to get together, to exchange ideas, to hear content that is 100% targeted for them, that they're gleaning bits and pieces. And forget having a conversation unless somebody asks you out to dinner, because if you find the right guy, which is really hard to do at a trade show, if they're the right guy is normally so much in demand that they're either not at the booth, or if they are, you may get a minute before somebody is pulling them away to talk to a client with an issue or a potential job. So I said, okay, let's put something together that has content that will be really, really appealing to the consultant community, with topics like cybersecurity liability, or working with integrators, or how do you deal with a general contractor that just blows your spec sky high? What do you do about that? And many of these issues have their shared pain points among everybody there. So even in some remote sense, the consultants who would attend, may be competitors. We were able to set that aside because we're dealing with things that were just common, either issues as I just described, or technologies, whether it be drones or communications or something, OSDP, something that maybe they didn't know enough about, but probably should. That these were all things that ideally would be of interest to the consultant attendees. So we took a flyer. We put, I thought, a solid program together. We invited manufacturers. We limited the number of people a manufacturer could send to 2, or in the higher paying cases 3. But we wanted their A&E person. We wanted a product knowledgeable person. We didn't want sales people strictly who didn't really understand the consultant role or know the product in depth, because consultants want to talk to engineers and they want to talk to people who actually know something about how products work, more than just superficially. So we said no trade show booths, no exhibits. For the manufacturers, we'll treat them like first-class citizens. We'll feed them. We will treat them like equal attendees. They are will be expected to go into the symposium sessions and interact as a regular participant, because they will learn and they will contribute in the process. And then we added a spouses program, because these folks travel so much, and if they bring their wives along on a trip, the wife or girlfriend, and they're mostly we're talking females here, may feel like a fifth wheel because there's nothing for them. But we had a very open and engaging spouse companion program that brought people in, and it was a big risk in the first year, a big financial risk. I'd never run any sort of a trade show or symposium before, but I'd been to plenty, and I knew what worked, what didn't work, and I threw a few crazy ideas of my own in there, and we threw it against the wall. And then we had people like Jim Henry out there helping to spread the word, and we had roughly 75 consultants and about 20 manufacturers, and darn it, it worked. People had a blast. Even in that first year, they said, "Who helped you do this?" I said, "Oh, no."
Well, you were out there.
Immediately friends and families,
Talk about the one-armed paper hanger. You were out there, printing badges and hanging lanyards and, doing everything. But I still remember that the first consult was right on top of the PSA convention. And you called me and said, "Jim, the integrators are all at the PSA convention. I need integrator representation here at consult." And I said, "Right. PSA conventions in Hawaii. The hell with Hawaii. I'll go to your event." I said, because I've never seen you take on something that you didn't make a great success, because, the planning, the assessment, the planning, the strategy, the logistics, you just pay that level of attention to detail. So did not surprise me at all that it was such a hit, the first go around, and it became really the talk of the industry. Here you are coming into a mature industry with basically a mature calendar where there was no room to fit anything anymore, because we were all so busy, with, like I say, either the manufacturer-specific trade shows or the organizational shows like ASIS, GSX, ISC, or whatever. But, because of the reputation that you had rightfully earned, people all recognize, this is going to be good, and it's going to bring an element that, that we haven't had at the other events. Ray is not about, reinventing the wheel if the wheel is working. So,
well, we had, we had a couple of comments, Jim, a couple that struck me, just really, it really made me feel good. One consultant said there was a group sitting around a table at the cocktail hour, and they said, "Ray, you got some real mojo going on here." Another one said, "Yeah, this is the best event I've ever been to. This is the only one I'm ever going to again." As well, I don't know that you ought to do that, but nevertheless, it made us feel pretty good. And so it really did strike a chord. And something that came out of that, Jim, if we just have another, couple of minutes here, was we've done a lot with cyber. And so a number of consultants said, once they understood that cyber liability, they said, "Ray, what the hell do we write in our specs?" And so I put together some model specification language, a first shot. It's on our website, securityspecifiers.com. And in putting that together, one section of a spec calls out integrator qualifications. And so what the heck kind of an integrator qualification do you put down for cyber? Because I've got several cyber certifications. They're all founded in IT. Not appropriate for the security tech that's got to go out and install and, even more than that, configure a system to make it cyber hardened. So the latest effort we have going on as a follow-on is, you mentioned it before, Jim, is an effort with SIA to roll out, and is scheduled for 2021, a cybersecurity certification specifically oriented towards a security technician. So it's not an IT certification; it's a security technician. So how do you lock down the edge devices? What do you need to know about servers and storage? Tell me about social engineering. Tell me about network addressing. Know enough so that when you interact with a company's IT department, you can have a reasonable conversation and do a good job. Password provisioning, another big issue, going on. So, the hits keep on coming. And unfortunately, this year, due to reasons that we all understand very well, we had to cancel Consult 2020 in Nashville. So we're going to do a virtual session on October 26th and October 27th. We have BICSI approval for it, so there'll be BICSI credits. AS's approval is pending for CPEs for the CPP and PSP certifications. Anybody that is interested in registering, we've got a link on our homepage at securityspecifiers.com. And then we have the agenda on the virtual tab on our Consult website, which is attendconsult.com. It's free to register. They're each day. We've got 3 1-hour segments, so you can tune to one, you can tune to all. They will be recorded. They'll be available later for those who want to know that. And hopefully in 2021, we'll be back at the site of our original Consult, that is San Antonio, down in the Riverwalk. And I just wonder, Jim, if this year we'll have repeat performance of somebody that both you and I do very well, swim across the canal on a bet before the thing is over. But anyway,
well, you really wrap that up great. I would say though that what you're doing now with cyber and with SIA, this is and involving the integrators and providing them a path for recognition of capability to the point where the consultants then can write some of those qualifications into specifications. All of this addresses one of the greatest risks that the end users out there now recognize, which is cyber threats. So do you see Consult or as a vehicle to help be another, bullhorn of communications out there to the end user community? Or do you see, really aligning all of the consultants and manufacturer stakeholders there, being the ones that have the charter then to educate end users on that, and that the projects, the specifications that they are putting out really need to be taking advantage of this additional set of discipline requirements for, projects going forward, because the threats aren't going to get any smaller?
Well, with our business model, it is difficult for me to reach out to that large population of end users out there. We've done some of that by past writings for Security Business Magazine, Security Technology Executive Magazine. So it is going to be up more to the other three, the manufacturers and the integrators and the consultants. But we're trying to help make the consultants as educated and as capable as they can be by having meaningful interaction with the manufacturers, by exposing them to technology, to business issues and the like, so they can be better prepared to have those conversations. So I think that it's going to be all the people on the supply side of the industry doing their best to interact with people on the demand side, bringing what they've learned, through vehicles such as ours to them, and hopefully creating some better engagement as the result. And part of the end user thing, Jim, is increasingly the IT portion of that end user. It's no longer just the security manager, the facilities manager. You're talking whether it's IT or CISOs or other people in the C-suite. So the nature of that engagement for the consultant is going to continue to evolve to a different type of end user engagement. And I think Consult can be a way to maybe help them manage that a little bit more effectively.
Well, that's great. So I have to apologize to my co-host here, Sal, because I've effectively monopolized most of the dialogue here. But Sal, do you have anything to add with regards to the perspective, again, from the end user community that you've been working so extensively with the last 20 years?
No, I just, there's not much to add after all of that. I think the end users don't recognize a lot of what goes on with the consultants and the work that Ray has done over the years. And I think it's important that the end users get to know more about it. And I'm talking about the true end users, the property managers, the security directors, the people that really understand what goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, they're benefiting from the value being brought into the industry, but they don't know the devil in the detail as we, as the other stakeholders in the industry do of what Ray's contributions have been. And, God willing, you don't look at retirement now for another couple of decades because there's plenty more to do.
You have to talk to my wife about that, Jim, but I think you're in the same boat.
Yeah, well, that's okay. That's okay. Well, thanks again, Ray. Really, really appreciate it. You have been listening to the Risk Advisor podcast hosted by Jim Henry and Sal Lafreri. We ask you to subscribe to this show and like us on our social media sites like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you are interested in having one or both of us speak at an upcoming event or would like to consult with us, please go to our webpage at theriskadvisor.com to set that up. Remember, you can hear the show on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube, and of course, stream it at theriskadvisor.com. Thank you again for listening. We hope you tune in again next week.